Good morning, everyone. It also helps if I unmute my microphone.
Yeah, ain't that help?
Let's see. Share your screen.
Yeah.
Screen one.
Yes. So daylight savings time happened for us and only for us and nowhere else. So that's why Discord probably is good for you.
Well, the timing is the event is set for GMT time, and usually I do these at 10 o'clock in the morning, and today it's 11 o'clock in the morning, but that's fine.
Yeah, because daylight savings time doesn't reflect that until like the end of the month or something. We do it a little bit early for some reason.
Okay. I thought the US was actually getting rid of it, but
We were, but it sat on someone's desk and they threw it out.
good. Good. I like daylight savings time. I'm pro daylight savings times. Okay, so this was our first week with the new backend using OpenGL 4.6, and there were 19 resolved bug reports. Um, and today, I actually have something a little bit different to talk to you about. I'm just going to tell you about some geospatial mapping stuff that I have not talked about at all. And I'll give you an idea of like some of the things that I'm planning in the future. Now, this is uh, future development, so anything can change because not all of it is known yet. But this is kind of a general direction that I would like to go in. Um, so let's get started. So this is a very quick review of where the company is at. So it was founded in, let's say, 2014 to provide video game development tools. Began working with NASA in 2017 on VR projects, and then started to shift focus to VR technology more for defense, aerospace, and entertainment. I presented some novel technology at ITSEC 2021, demonstrating 10 times faster performance for VR simulations, and the new VR development software platform was released in December 2023. These slides are more aimed at like enterprise customers, so keep that in mind. This is the performance we saw between our closest competitor, and then this is our where we were in December 2023, and this is the performance for the new version. Now this is on the AMD Radeon 6600, and we found on NVIDIA cards it's actually about the same. We only saw that massive increase on the AMD cards, which is like the opposite of what I thought would happen. So that's interesting. So the next step in what I want to do in the future, this is more like a 2.0 kind of feature. I would like to focus on large scale simulations. I mean, really, really big. We made things 10 times faster. Now I want to make things 100 million times bigger. And build what I call a massive multi domain simulation, which is a continuous simulation of the entire solar system. If my math is correct, we can simulate out to Jupiter's furthest orbit. It doesn't have a constant orbit, it varies, but its furthest orbit, I think we can simulate that with millimeter precision everywhere. This involves streaming a lot of geospatial mapping data and real-time tracking of land, air, sea, and space assets, ships, satellites, planes. So that's a big plan, and you have to start somewhere. So I decided to start with the moon for two reasons. It's a much smaller surface area than the Earth. I think the Earth's surface area is like 13.5, 13.4 times bigger than the moon's surface area. And then the moon is a lot simpler to render because you got no atmosphere, no water, no plants, no life, no human buildings. It's just gray rocks and black space. So when I started doing this, I was actually very surprised to find that there is no ready to use data set for moon elevation and color and such for 3D rendering. There's really nothing out there. Everything, all the data out there, whether it's the raw data or different processed sets of data, it's all designed for use in flat 2D geospatial viewing programs, which means everything's a Mercator projection, which means cylindrical. So that means that you have a lot of distortion you have a very bad allocation of pixels as you go north and south. There's really nothing out there for 3D rendering. So that's the first thing I had to do, was create a multi-resolution data set from the raw data. The second thing I investigated is two types of AI enhancement, both in-painting and upscaling, and I'll talk about that. And then 3D rendering of for the Earth. This involves streaming terrain, vegetation, ocean, atmosphere. Klepto, one of our users in the community, he happens to be working on a lot of this stuff, and I don't tell him what to work on. He just follows wherever his creativity takes him. But he does know, I kind of told him ahead of time, hey, this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing with NASA and such in the future. And he's done some very, very interesting work there. So I'd check out his screenshots and videos if you want to learn more about what he's doing with that. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with the existing data that's out there. Like I said, it's not designed for 3D rendering. There's really no usable elevation data at multiple resolutions. Usually when they serve these, if you have like a web map service, they usually compress the color, including elevation. They like to compress all the color into these 8-bit per channel images. It doesn't work with, so that creates just a lot of problems. The diffuse image, the albedo images for the moon have incomplete coverage of the poles because the satellite couldn't get a shot because there's some craters that are always in the shadow and never see light. And then of course there's no normal maps. That's not even a consideration. So here's the problem with elevation precision. All the web map servers that I've looked at, they all compress things down to like an 8-bit grayscale image, or they'll create like an RGB image with a very creative like color gradient. And it's good if you're because if you're looking at on a flat screen, if you're looking at a flat 2D program, you can see the contours of the terrain in these different like rainbow colors. But it's terrible it just destroys the data for 3D rendering, and it creates this stair-stepping effect that you see on the left. Color precision, especially on the moon, is actually really important. The moon has a very high range of color, of brightness, and you have very extreme lighting conditions. So if you use 8-bit color, you get a lot of banding. You either get the lows or the highs cut off. So like the bright spots, the bright parts of the moon will get like really washed out, and it'll just be like completely white. You really want to preserve that color resolution, and so that's why I had to go back to the raw data rather than using any of the existing web map services. Okay, so the solution was to generate elevation and albedo data sets from the original scientific data, and then generate normal and tangent maps from the elevation data, and then downsample everything using like a virtual memory technique because these images are too big to fit in memory. and basically make a multi-resolution tile set. So I had to, like, this stuff is kind of hard to find. I had to poke around like a bunch of weird like NASA servers to find all the original data, and it's all in these strange made up file formats. So that was kind of an interesting process. And there's also like thousands of different data sets out there, but there's only one good one. Like there's only the one that you want, and then there's 1,000 other ones that you don't want. So this is what the elevation looks like. This is how it's divided up. We've got 3 images that go around the poles up to around the equator, up to 60 degrees. And then, so up and down 60 degrees. So it's 120 degrees this way, and it's 120 degrees this way. And there's 3 of them, which makes 360 degrees. And then you have a flat projection for the north and the south. This is elevation. And from that, we can calculate normal maps for the whole moon. This is what the albedo looks like. This is the surface color. And you'll notice on the north and the south poles, these look like donuts. We've got this big circle of missing data. And remember that? I'll talk about that in a minute. So we had to take the full resolution images, which is like hundreds of thousands of pixels by hundreds of thousands of pixels, and process those, split them up, and then merge them, and create this multi-resolution set. And with each level, we half the resolution, and we have 1/4 as many images. So this is the lowest resolution at the top, and then that splits into 4 images that are also 1024 by 1024. And then the next level down splits it into 16, and then 32 and 64, 128, and so on. And this goes down 7 levels from here to the highest resolution. So I guess that, what's 2 to the power of 7? Is that, okay. So I guess it goes down 16 times or 32 times. So this is what it looks like. This gives you an idea of the scale, the huge change in scale. We're doubling the resolution as we go down each time, and we have 7 different layers here. So like this crater here that ends up taking up half the image, like you can't even see it. It's like smaller than 1 pixel at the very top level. That might be it. Yeah, I can't really see it at the top level. So and then, of course, when you get to the bottom here, at the highest resolution, we have images at that resolution covering the entire surface of the moon. So it's a lot of data. I think we have a uniform resolution of 55 meters per pixel. And now we'll take a look at some of the results when using these textures to render. This is very high up, and this lighting is not correct, of course, but it does look pretty cool. A little bit lower, flying closer to the surface. I think we're at about 4 levels up now, so we can double this resolution 4 more times, I think. And then we can also, this is using height and normal and albedo, but we can also overlay scientific imagery onto the surface and see it in 3D. And there's a lot of layers. Like there's probably 100 different things that we can overlay on top of it, like surface temperature. There's maps for like how rocky an area is. A lot of different stuff. Okay, now there's 2 AI techniques that we can also use: in painting and upsampling. And do you remember how I said I showed you how the albedo imagery here, it's missing. It's got these areas where it's like here be dragons. So the lunar polar albedo imagery has very big gaps in the data, and we can actually, I've done some tests using AI in painting to fill these in, and it's actually pretty good. So I was able to get my hands on some data that this is what those black areas, those blacked out areas, look like. I was able to find this somewhere else, and this was sort of like edited out from the images because it looks like Swiss cheese. And I think these are all sort of craters that don't ever see the light, and so no matter how many times the satellite passes by, it can't get a photo of that. I think this is using the wide angle camera from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. But when we apply in painting to these areas, we get this. Before, after. And it's not, it's not perfect because it's impossible to know what the actual color there is. But that is pretty good. That is pretty darn good. And it's just color data, so it's not critical. And of course, if you want to see the pixels that are sort of imagined, you can overlay kind of a mask on top of it, and then that tells you, okay, which pixels are photographed and which are just filled in. And then AI upsampling is the other technique that we can apply to this. So here's some terrain data, and then we're going to increase the resolution by 4 times, and it looks like that. Well, is this useful data is the question, because it's kind of imagined by the deep learning algorithm. And I'd say no, but the way that you make it useful is you perform a statistical analysis on known data. So what you can do, for example, is take high resolution data and then downsample it 4 times with a bilinear filter, and then run it through the AI algorithm and upscale it 4 times, and then compare your results to the original data. And if you do that, like each pixel is going to have a certain amount of error, right? And then from that, and you have a known amount of pixels, so you can calculate your average error, and you can from that you can calculate the variance and the standard deviation. From that, you can get a confidence interval, and so we can do things like we can generate multiple data sets showing like the upper and lower bounds of each confidence interval. So for example, we can say, well, we're 95% confident that here's a real value, these white dots, and then the green is what our AI came up with. And then we can say, if we have a statistical analysis with known data, we can say, okay, well, this is what our AI created, and we have a 95% confidence that the true value lies between this upper and this lower value. And we can actually generate like multiple data sets, so we can show like what the high range of our estimate is and what the low range of our estimate is. And that's how you make that. That prediction useful. So Earth rendering. This is all stuff that I'd like to do in the future. Process geospatial data, same as the moon. It's just on a bigger scale. So that's something that I'm kind of working on in the background right now. I haven't done it yet because the data is much bigger. We can select the surface material from satellite data. We have the Google Global Land Use data set, which tells us whether something's grass or it has a lot of different just general definitions of what is on the ground at that point. An ocean water simulation, procedural vegetation placement, atmospheric light scattering, volumetric cloud coverage based on real time satellite data, and then real time tracking of various vehicles and things. And this is more like future work stuff that's being created. And again, like Klepto 2 is doing some very interesting work with this, so I would check out his work. And yeah, I'll let him talk about that in whatever way he wants to. So to review, what we can handle is processing of large image data sets into these multi-resolution tile sets suitable for 3D rendering and zooming in and out. We can do AI enhancement of geospatial data using in-painting to fill in gaps and upsampling to increase that resolution, as well as running a statistical analysis to make those predicted values actually useful. And then finally, what we're working on is fuller 3D rendering and simulation in like one continuous simulation: the Earth, the Moon, the solar system, the Sun, all in one big sim. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking that I want to do in the future. That's all I got.
Neat. One question. Like, how will you like simulate the curvature of like these planets? Because I'm under the assumption that you want to be able to scale out and then actually like land on the moon or something. So you need to have the terrain do like a curvature effect around to make like a sphere kind of. So I'm interested like in that kind of bit.
Yeah, what you do is you apply an equation to warp the vertex. You
Mm-hmm.
just need an equation that says, okay, a vertex on the flat terrain is here. Okay, now we're going to transform it, and it's going to be actually here. And when you do that, if you apply that consistently, it actually works for everything. Um, okay, so it's pretty easy to apply that in a shader, in the vertex shader. But if you also apply it in the culling system, when you calculate the bounds of each bounding box, then the bounding boxes, like if they're created from these warped vertices, then that all works out. The terrain, the physics system, you can actually do the same thing. You just generate the triangles around the. Newton has a feature where you dynamically generate geometry around a physics body, and so you can apply the same warping there. It works with, let's see, I think ray casting is something that might be. That's the only thing I can think of that might be tricky. I'll have to think about that. But if you just apply the same equation everywhere, then it works out. And so what you do is you take six terrains and you make a cube out of them, and then you just turn that into a sphere.
Right. No, it's interesting because you know I'm also curious. Do you need like 64-bit floating
Yeah, yeah, of course.
points and all that? Like, um, would it be possible to like do like a downscaled version of like this technology so like people can make their space games and whatnot? Because I don't think they need that accurate data. They just want to make something that looks good enough to be like a moon or something. So,
Well, what do you mean by
um,
downscaled?
like not downscale, but like use the same technologies, but like you don't need like that much overhead because doing the you're not doing like the full plant like in Starfield. you can't walk across the entire planet because they don't have that. They just didn't have that in their budget. So you could be like, so I'm more impressed about like the terrain system and how like it looks like the moon when your screen just actually look like the moon. So, but that's kind of easy because there's no atmosphere or anything. It's just a terrain in the rock, you know. And
The biggest challenge here, I think, like as far as games go, I think the biggest challenge here is the data is very very big. Um,
right,
I mean, I still haven't figured out, how big the okay. So the full resolution. It's not. If you don't do AI upsampling, it's not that bad. Like I have I have the highest resolution of the entire Earth that's available, like uniformly,
right,
and it's only like 8 point something gigabytes, which isn't bad. And then you turn that into, so you've got 8 gigs, and then uh, let's say normal maps are another 10 gigs, and then uh,
mm-hmm.
color maps are going to be another 10 gigs. Okay, so we're looking at like 30 gigabytes. We'll probably have other data in there too, so maybe more like 40 or 50 gigabytes. That's still something that you could distribute with a game. If you go upsampling, then 50 gigabytes times 4, 200 gigabytes. Okay, times 4. Now we're at plus the original. Okay, now we're at a terabyte of data. Then it becomes something that you can't really distribute, and you have to have a server to
Right,
stream that stuff in.
right. No, I'm just saying because people can look at these space sims and be like, Ultra Engine is the perfect engine for my space game, and without noticing the how much overhead actually goes into it. So
Um,
I'm just like just preparing you that like possibility that someone might come across like all this space stuff and think, oh hey, this is great for my space shoot or something.
okay, so I think the question is how would you create a probably smaller how would you create probably smaller planets using fictional terrain data,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yeah, like how would you like to use this technology to make something for games? Like how would this transcend like or help game development in a sense, while also satisfying your needs of the enterprise business?
You would
Because if you can,
you would probably need so you would need like something that generates very big terrain height maps, and they would have to wrap. You'd probably want to do a cubic projection, and so they would wrap around like the top. Um, you could probably just, I mean, if you, okay, let's say you generated like four 32,768, or you generated six 32,768 by 32,768 height maps. You could probably just cross blend those like within a certain region, like a border region, and it would probably look fine. And then you've got your planet, and you would just have to have that split up into, well, it wouldn't have to be split up into multiple tiles, into multiple files, but you would have to have a system to load in segments of that data dynamically. So the way I did this, like when I was working on this like a couple years ago actually, and what I came up with was I made a callback of I made a user defined callback that the engine calls when it's requesting a portion of data. Then the user can feed that. It can return like a pix map with that height data or whatever it is, and that way the user can they can load a file from the local hard drive, or they can request it from like a web map service or something, like a remote tile server. That was how I handled that. So I mean, yeah, I do think it is possible to make this usable for very, very big space games.
Right. Cool.
But yeah, that's something that I've got. I have some stuff going on next week with that, so I thought it would be cool just to show you guys like a segment of what I had been working on, because I haven't really talked about that stuff much.
You brought it up here and there, but you never like really explained what you were doing.
Yeah. So that this was week one with the OpenGL 4.6 backend, and it was actually like pretty great to have 80% of my problems just disappear. Oh yeah, prefabs are back on the table.
Ooh.
Yep, they're working in the current build. I think currently there's no mechanism that, like, if you change a value in the prefab, if you change one of the properties, it doesn't tell you, hey, you're going to. There's nothing that changes it from a prefab into a normal entity. And then I think the flow graph connections stored in a prefab. I don't think that's currently supported. But other than that, they should be working. So we're back on that. Um,
All right.
yeah, so we're making progress again, and I'm very happy with that.
Right. So what's left to do with the prefab? Like, or are they done? I don't know if they're like, done yet. Like besides like that issue brought up, but
The two things that I
in
said, I'm not aware of any other. I'm not aware of any other problems.
um does it support flow graph connections?
That was one of the
Or
things I
no?
said. Uh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
um,
Right.
so yeah, that's the. I don't think it'll load the flow graph connections from a prefab
Okay.
right now. I have to add that in,
All right.
and there is
Yeah.
some question about like exactly how that should work. But
Right. All right. Yeah, I didn't really play with the prefabs that much because I'm worried that I'm gonna make a prefab and it's gonna break.
that'll probably happen still.
Yeah.
But they're we're back solving those issues again. So
All right. So what you're saying is I should make prefabs and report bugs.
that would be fantastic in whatever as much as you want. NASA has DEM data. Yeah, that's where I got my data from.
Yeah, because I think the prefab system might be good enough to do like the view model system, where I was thinking about doing the view model as a prefab, and this way you can like set like the weapons damage, the crosshair, and like maybe even sounds, pretty much like firing sounds and reloading sounds and all that within the prefab, and then you just use
That makes
that
sense.
component.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd use that component, and then you just make a prefab with the view model, and you just load the prefab. So I don't know, I'll experiment with my own systems and see, because I kind of want to make something that I could just reuse.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's also like two uh, ideas for some API changes. One is that we were talking about making the user interface object, changing that so you don't have to like creating an interface on either a texture buffer or a frame buffer. In
Hmm.
which case, it would just get drawn on top of the camera after the camera renders. Or
Right. So this way you don't have to fight with what what render layer and everything is. Because I was like, because I fixed the bugs I talked to you about
Hmm.
early this week, and one of those was that I forgot to set the render layer to the UI camera. So yeah, I mean that would actually make it a lot easier because, but I kind of want the ability to put um to make another interface and then have it draw behind a like I have a console interface and I want that always to be drawn on top no matter what. But I want my game user interface to be behind the the console pretty much. So the console's always on top. Um and how I would do that in Leadworks was that I'll create the console after I create the menu.
Hmm.
But I want everything to be compartmentalized so I don't have to like worry about that. So I could just be like, oh, the console's always on top no matter what. So what
Well,
I would do is, hmm,
the only like, I mean, this does add some restrictions. The only thing I can think of right now is like nothing can be in front of a user interface because the user interface is always drawn last. So
right,
nothing's
but
on
you
top
can,
of it, and no post processing effects can be drawn on top of it because it's drawn after everything else, after all the other cameras.
okay, but what happens if you have multiple user interfaces at the same time?
And then they just get drawn in whatever order.
Right. So, in my case, I would use the new potential API feature to draw my console window to make sure that's always on top. And then my game menu will use the system that's currently in right now, where I create a camera and I create the interface um, to the camera and everything. And then I could set the render layer to where I want it to be in the rendering the layer space, pretty much. But I know
Well,
that my console window will always be on top.
if I add an overload that if I tie the interface to like the frame buffer or a texture buffer,
Mm-hmm.
then the current way of doing things will go away.
Mm.
Um,
All right.
Now with the
Well,
frame buffer, you no longer, since it's tied to, okay, another couple of other considerations. With a frame buffer, like because that's kind of tied to a window,
mhm,
events no long you no longer would have to manually send events to the interface because the
right.
window would just do that automatically. However, if you recreate the window, you might have to
Rebuild it. And,
well, either that or I'm thinking like just have like an interface set frame buffer command where you just switch it over to the new frame buffer that is created.
right.
And then if an interface is created on a texture buffer, then you would still need to feed events into the interface because that's there's no connection between that and window. Typically, that's used for like an in-game interface on a 3D panel or for like a VR menu where you're feeding your events going into it would be like based on your controller shooting a laser, that you know would be
Right.
sort of analogous to a mouse.
Right. It's a lot. And I think another thing I want is if we were to like compress the interface, is automatically scaling because sending events to say, oh, my Windows rebuilt, resize everything based on the new Windows size or the new frame buffer
Well,
size is
I
kind of
would do
annoying.
that. I would do that automatically as part of the like when you set
Right.
it to a new frame buffer.
Right. So I think doing it in the frame buffer, doing like how it was in Leadworks, you just assign a 3D frame buffer to just you assign the interface to a frame buffer, and then the events and rescaling and everything just gets set automatically, and then you
Yeah.
just
I think
reassign the frame buffer.
I think it would be a good idea if there is a simple function to create an interface and simple overlay interface. As I see, many people have really, really much problems with initializing an interface in Ultra. Just a normal overlay or something, maybe some helper class or something. I don't know.
Well, how you would do it, you'll just create your interface and you'll just pass the frame buffer
Yeah,
to
but
it.
it's too complicated for some people. They come maybe from other engines, and there you have one command create interface, and the engine is make the everything else for you.
Well, I think that's basically what we're describing right now. Is
Right? It'll
you just
handle.
create the interface, given the frame buffer, and then it just appears. You don't have to create like a second camera.
Yeah, no cameras or anything, and all the events will be handled for you. You don't have to pass events or worry about rescaling or anything. It will just be like Leadworks pretty much, where it's just on top of your 3D scene and that's it.
At least some helper. I can understand that people like the possibility to create more impressive stuff with the new UI system. But yeah, as I said, some helper or webpack class.
Well,
I
what would
think
a
it would
helper
be
class
good.
do that would be any simpler than
Uh,
what we just described?
yeah, exact the same. Just yeah, told this.
Okay. And the other, so we can try that if you guys think it's a good idea. We'll just try it, and if it sucks, then we can adjust. But the other thing I'm kind of thinking about is directional lights. Um, the way a directional light works
Mhm.
is each directional light has four box lights that it uses to create to do the different um, stages for the cascaded shadow map. Um, but it's actually more complicated than that. A It generates a directional light actually generates one directional light for every single camera that uses lighting also uses an orthograph or a perspective projection. Anyways, so it's easy to if you have multiple eh, if you have multiple cameras, you can actually end up with extra directional lights that you might not have intended to want, that you might not have wanted. I'm thinking about tying a directional light to a camera instead. So you would have to provide a camera when the directional light is created, because that's how they actually work.
All right. Well, would that work with the editor? Because like you create a scene, and I guess this is also has the same problem as the post effects for maps, because you'll create a scene, but you don't know what the main camera is going to be.
Yeah,
So,
I'm I'm kind of thinking about that.
mm, um,
I don't know, but
so
mm,
yeah, because yes, because in my code, it's not tested. I created a wrapper class and call it like client camera, and that's like the class that's supposed to be like the main like game camera, and I have it pull events to like say, oh, a setting was changed, or um, it's like, or it has like zooming and the mouse controls all built in. I know that's like very that's more top level than engine, but I think we should have like a dedicated primary camera like class. This way we know what cameras meant what I think we need to separate like a game like a camera that someone would use for like the actual like their games, and then like a camera used for projections pretty much. So
what about this? Okay,
mhm.
directional lights are unique because the vast majority of the time, almost always, 99.9% of the time, you only need one. The one
Right.
exception I can think of that I've ever seen in my entire life where you would need two directional lights is for lightning. If you have like some lightning going and you still have the other directional light going, that's the
Mhm.
one time I've ever seen when you would need two directional lights. Never in my life have I seen a situation where you would need three directional lights.
Well, what happens?
So
Okay,
maybe
but
we should be thinking more in terms of like it's kind of a world setting. and you can have
Right. We should
you have a hard coded limit of 2 directional lights.
right. So maybe you put that the light information as well as the post processing information into like a struct or something, and then you have to tell the camera to load it, the world settings. But
I
that
don't know.
might
I'm saying like maybe directional lights, maybe like we're just treating them as like these objects that you can just create as many of as you want, and that's
right,
not. We might be making things more difficult for ourselves that way.
right. So what you're saying, like in the scene panel, you just say directional light, like it's like ambient light, but directional,
Yeah,
and instead of
yeah,
having it
maybe,
be,
maybe.
yeah, instead of having it be a point in the world, and yeah, so it just does that. Yeah, I think that would be a lot better because especially in the big scene, you'll put a direction on a light like in like a train scene, and then you'll don't know where it is because your world is just
That's
so
true.
dense
Yeah.
with. So I think anything regarding like shader, like image, like rendering, like imagery, like post shaders or directional light or something, should be in the scene panel. But with your lightning example, how would that work then? Because
Well, I mean, I would say like, okay, first I would say there's never any reason to create a second directional light in the editor. The only time you would ever do that is in code.
right,
And the code would probably look like something like world set directional light,
right,
and then you use like the second, and you would have like an index for either the first or the second, and then set like world set directional light color,
mhm,
111, and then 1 for the index instead of 0 or something like
right,
that.
and then but you need to also its rotation and such.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if you want that multiple commands or you just want to put all that information into a struct and then pass and then feed that struct into a function.
I don't know, but this is actually just something that I like just thought of as we were talking. So I'm gonna
No,
keep
I
thinking about it, but
no, I think this is good, but I keep bringing up post processing effects because you brought up like you don't know what cameras what, and I
yeah.
think that was the issue with like fog and post processing effects. So I think if you figure out a solution for your lighting situation, you can apply that solution to your other
Um,
camera related issues.
yeah. So speaking of post processing effects, because we're getting up to we're approaching to where that can I can add that in to the editor interface.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean we want it on a global. We want like a per map setting. I think.
Right.
Um, what about if you have a camera in the scene and you want different post processing effects applied to it? Should that just be done like in code, or
I think, well, you need like like your average scene post processing effects, like with, like fog and, you know,
yeah, and those would just get applied to every camera that gets created in
right.
the as the scene is loaded.
Yeah, every like 3D camera. Yeah, and then code wise, let's say I have like a near death shader where the screen turns black and white or whatever. Um, that would have to be applied in Lightworks. I would just apply that to the camera on code, and I would just assume that always gets drawn on top of the scene.
So maybe I should just do the global setting for the scene and not worry about the details right now.
Yeah, I mean, get something in, and then wait until people complain on how like
Okay.
what they're trying to do, because having something's better than nothing at this point. So
Yeah. Um, okay. What do you guys think the interface for adding post processing effects should be? Because I don't know if it's going to fit into like.
well, does it matter where in the stack it's placed? like in LEDWorks, like if something like if you have two post processing shaders, but if you had one over the other, you got different results than if one was on the bottom or something. If they were like swapped, is
Well,
that
okay,
still?
okay. So we want to add we want to have properties
Mhm.
for each thing. So you've got like a list of them, but you're going to have like properties. I'm not sure if this interface is the best for that. I'm kind of thinking there should be like a button here that you press, and then there's a window that opens up, and it's like environment settings or something like that. Like,
Yeah, this way it's not all like it's like the side panel is great for like simple things, but once you have like a lot of like things to go through, I just hate like with Unreal, there's like everything imaginable was just in the side panel. It was just like ridiculous. So
in
I think
fact, we might actually. This is something I like from like some programs like a View, that skybox generator. We
mhm,
might actually want to. I'm kind of thinking we might want to get rid of this. So when you have the scene root selected, this just all goes away, and
right,
have like a window where all your environment settings are, because this is a more like, it's not just a simple like, a bunch of check boxes. It is a more involved interface.
right, and then you can like take the window and put it like somewhere else, or like on a second monitor or something, and then you can like change like the ambient light color or the directional light color or like the fog and the fog color, the fog angle, like
Yeah, and you could
really
have like special interfaces for like, if you wanted to get into like, what the latitude, if assuming it's on Earth, you could get into like what the latitude is, what the longitude is, what the time of day is, or what the actual
right.
date is. Okay, this calculates the sun angle for you.
Oh yeah, that would be great. This way, you could be like, oh, I want a nighttime map, and then you could just
In 1922 on December 5th at,
yeah,
55 latitude,
that
49
would actually be
longitude.
cool. That would actually be great. I mean, we still want that like artistic aspect there, but it'd be great like if you can download like a profile, pretty much like it'll just be like a JSON file, and you just load that information from the JSON file, and then you'll just have like a nice, like like a color profile, and you don't have to like worry about if it looks like weird or off-putting or something. But you still want to allow people to, um, you still want people to like create their own environments because they might make worlds that don't exist. So yeah, but I'm in favor of a scene properties window versus just a panel that often gets overlooked.
Yeah, something sort of, I don't know if this is really the right interface, but I think this program has some pretty cool things if I can find the right.
Right. But how would you access it since you want to get rid of the panel? Would it be like a toolbar
Maybe
option
maybe
or
you right click. Maybe it's a tool menu, or maybe you like up here like tools, environment
right,
settings, or like you right click. I think I like this better, like tools, environment, and then having
right,
like a big window, and that would give us a lot more like options for cool things that we could do.
right, and and again, the whole profile saving settings to JSON file I think would benefit because like for me, um, all my maps will have the same environment settings because they're just like
Oh yeah, yeah.
the room, and then you can just import it because I think I had like a map I set to read only and it had all my like shaders and colors and everything all set. And every time I wanted to make a new map, I would just load that map and then resave it.
Mm, yeah, we could put post processing effects in this too. Yeah, like okay, I think this is atmosphere editor, but like stuff
Right,
like this is very like artistic. It gives you
right.
a lot more
Yeah, I
options
like
than just like clicking around, some things here.
Yeah, I really like that other interface you had open, not the busy one, the simple, the artsy one. Not that one. Yeah, that one. Um, third tab. I'm sorry, third tab. The one you have in that box right there.
This
Yeah, that one. I think that is something you can easily
that is pretty
mimic.
cool.
Yeah, with different tabs, and you can choose your skyboxes and everything. And I really think that's what we should be doing.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what we should be going for.
This I like this kind of stuff. It's
Yeah,
just fun.
right.
Let's see what else we've got in here. Oh, that's just exporting. Okay, so I think we want something sort of loosely inspired by this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Would be pretty cool.
and what you could do, you could take Klepto's PBR generator, and with an extension, you can have a different tab for converting the skybox, the cube maps into skybox.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this.
Yeah,
I like the icons too. I don't know why.
yeah.
Well, what I think would actually be really cool is if, like, with the post processing effects, if you showed like the full, you had like the stack of effects, and
Mm-hmm.
then each one showed an image of like the effect that it had, just isolated.
Right,
I
but
think that would be cool.
that would be cool, but it would require a lot of resources within the editor.
No, not
Um,
really. It just has to. You just have to render it once and snap a screenshot.
or what you can do is have a live preview, like a 3D live preview.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I
But
definitely
then
think this
again,
is more like, um,
mhm,
this is like a more artistic kind of approach.
yeah,
I mean, this is good
yeah,
for like, if I'm setting like,
a box size or something.
yeah, if I'm setting like, the mass of, a box or the friction or, the
Mhm.
color of a single object, then this makes sense.
Right,
But yeah, for like your full environment, that's when I want to have fun. I want to enjoy that process and experiment
right.
with all the settings.
All right. I'm gonna take back my 3D rendering because it's already being 3D rendered in the scene. Like the idea is that you have that window somewhere else or on the second monitor, and you're just playing with the colors and everything, and then
Oh,
you'll
you're right. You
watch.
don't have to. You can just leave it open. You don't have to have this selected. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. I'm convinced.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So that'll be great if
Cool.
that gets an overall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, we're making progress. The first week, like Monday, was a little bit rough. Uh,
All right, because everything broke.
yeah. Well, I was kind of scared that day, and then like we were just like very methodical about it, and everything got resolved very quickly.
Yeah.
So I'd say that was
I
like, I mean, we just completely replaced the rendering backend in like 6 weeks. That was like, that's like that's got to be like a world record for time.
right.
For a renderer of that complexity to be written in
Right.
that short of time was amazing.
And you fix bugs along the way. And then, from what I discovered, you had a bug in the old code, and then when you fixed it, it broke my code, but my code was wrong.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, actually, there's a lot of other internal stuff that I just never would have gotten to it. With Vulkan,
Right.
it would have just never even been discovered because I'd still be like screwing around with like image layouts and crap like that. So this has been like so far, like I'm already seeing a very good
Mhm.
result. And like on my end, it's like it really is like 80% of my problems just went away. So now I'm free to just
Right.
like write code, and I have a lot of
Mhm.
I've had a lot of ideas actually now. The ideas are flowing again.
Right. So going forward, you're going to work on the editor and hopefully catch up on some requests that we talked about. Like I know Spider Pig wants his world update hooks, and that'll be
Oh
useful
yeah,
too.
yeah. That's a good one because that'll allow those guys to customize the
Yeah.
renderer and experiment more. I'm actually amazed at what they were able to do with Vulkan. I wasn't expecting a lot of third party stuff to
Yeah.
even arise.
Yeah, that's a little bit above me, but it's
Another
crazy that.
another idea I've got is maybe we should have a selection. We should have just a selection tool up here that just looks like an arrow. Like put it right here.
Thank you.
Simply, uh,
I
what?
wanted that. I wanted a selection tool since the very beginning.
Well, the reason is it's like all of these tools will act as a selection tool, but
Right.
it's it it's not visually clear, and it's easy to
Right.
forget. Like if you're in creation mode, then
Mhm.
you can't select anything, and that was done because we had too much problems with this.
Right.
You can deselect things, but you can't select things. But if there was a little arrow here and this was all shifted over one space, then it would be
Right.
clear that if I click on that thing, then I can select things.
Yeah, and then you can use the selection tool for box selection. Because that's
What?
box selection where you just make a box around something and instead of creating a box, it selects everything.
What's about a setting which you can set up for yourself if you want to create only one object that is going automatically into the last selected transformation option? Like
But
if you create a box and it was before in the rotation, that is going back to the rotation afterwards.
I was just saying like um bulk selecting pretty much. We
Like
just make a box.
multiple selection.
Yes.
We could also do that just by like making it so like if you hold the shift key here,
Right.
then it does that. I noticed in Blender, I think if you just like click and you start dragging, then it just
Yeah.
automatically does that.
No, you have to press B first to
Really?
go in selection mode. Yep.
Okay, but well, if we do that, I think the shift key might be better to have it so you have to hold the shift key because
No, I don't.
otherwise, yeah.
It's more intuitive if you hold the shift key, in my opinion.
No,
It's like in every else or in every other software. If you hold shift, then you can select multiple stuff.
It would also we could also treat that as a selection override, so that
right.
we're in create mode. We've got this
Hmm.
selected, and then if I press the shift key, then it allows me to select this box, and it also allows me to if I drag it, then it does it starts dragging out a box and the selection selects everything in that region.
Right. That might also be an alternative for making a new button. I think you should try that first before making a new button, since that'll
Yeah.
be less work.
Well, we might yeah, let's try it. I actually have time now, so yeah. Like another really interesting thing. Like I knew like things were going well when I actually was like responding to some people's like reports, and I was like, I responded to them, and then like they were asleep or whatever because they were on the other side of the world, or some people have to go to work, and I was like, wait, I responded to this guy. Oh, he still hasn't responded. Okay, okay, I'll check back later. Oh, he still hasn't responded. Okay, I haven't been in that situation in quite a while. Like I'm always the bottleneck. It seems like I'm always the bottleneck, and then it was just like it was a new experience to me to not be to actually be waiting for somebody else's response because I'm usually like the slow one, and now I'm not.
I got a general question about the rendering. You implemented OpenGL fix, right? Did you think about maybe to create some render devices that you can have multiple, like DirectX 12, Vulkan, OpenGL? That's
It's possible, but it just like it takes so much time to like. I mean, doubling up the amount of work is not. I mean, I don't even have time. I don't have time to maintain a Vulkan renderer, so I don't have time to maintain a Vulkan renderer and another one. I think
the,
it.
the,
What's
the
that?
thing where I'm coming from is OpenGL is really old. Don't get me wrong, I also like OpenGL very much, but it's really old and this doesn't get any updates anymore. So
It does get extensions. The only thing that Vulkan does that OpenGL doesn't do is ray tracing. And we can do there is a way to share memory in between those two. So, you know, when I get to ray tracing, like um it is possible to use Vulkan just for the ray tracing. I don't think we'll be using OpenGL forever. Um but like right now the industry is in total chaos. I think it's pretty clear that Vulkan adoption failed. And I think, you know, they're not going to come out and say, Vulkan was a mistake. We screwed up. They're not going to say that. There's just going to be this shift in approaches, which we saw. Like now, Apple is supporting DirectX on. They're starting to support DirectX on their platform, which you never would have. I mean, we never saw that before.
yeah, but they don't support OpenGL, right? Apple
They do.
is
They do
or
support.
Mac.
They still support OpenGL. Yeah.
Okay, I read something that they don't support it anymore, but I think it was on mobile devices or something.
Probably not on iPhone, but on Mac, it's deprecated, but it's still there. Like if they were gonna get rid of it, anyways. Like I think it looks like in a few years, it looks like we're probably going to be using DirectX 14 everywhere. But I think it's going to take it's going to take, you know, maybe 4 or 5 more years to get there. And I'm not going to stick my neck out again because we got burned. We got burned on Vulkan.
Is it possible for an end user to make their own render? Let's say they need DirectX before you support it. Is it possible for them to create their own render and just feed it to the Ultra render, or no?
It's not easily set up to do that. You probably could, but at that point, it's like, I mean, at that point, they're just making their own engine.
Mm. Yeah, but they don't. But they don't have to make their own tools or anything. So
Yeah, I don't know. If somebody comes along who really wants to do that, then you know we can talk. But
right. I was just curious because when you're porting it, you're like, oh, I made this like layer, so you could just write
yeah,
your.
that's how I started. I think I was sort of having trouble letting go of the idea of Vulkan, and I wanted to be able to like I was being kind of wishy washy, but it's not a bad idea. But when I really got into it, I realized what I need to do first is I needed to get the OpenGL renderer, the OpenGL backend established as quickly as possible. Because I needed to like undo the damage that Vulkan did as quickly as possible. And having another layer of abstraction was not conducive to that. That might be something I do in the future. Like there's a couple of more features with OpenGL that I want to get into, like sparse, like virtual textures, which I've never worked with before, and then the vegetation system is going to use like some transform feedback stuff. I think I don't know. I haven't worked in it with it for a while, so I need to get those things sorted out. And once I do that, then it might make sense. Then at that point, I've got kind of a full view of everything that we're doing with OpenGL. At that point, it might make sense to abstract that into like a API, like I was talking about, and then they can have another backend added in the future. I don't think we'll be using OpenGL forever, but you know, for our needs, it really is the best thing out
I
there right
think
now.
I think Kronos should create an OpenGL 5, like something which is using Vulkan, but yeah, make it more easy to use, like OpenGL with the old commands and all the stuff.
Now, why would you even want to use the Vulkan drivers? Like we've seen, they're not good. But yeah, it
Yeah,
would.
but if they create it for your own, then they see the problems and
Yeah.
they need to fix them, not the end user needs to fix those problems.
Well, the people who are at Kronos now are not the people who invented OpenGL. Like they're completely different people who inherited this thing, and they don't seem to understand it. Because like I showed you, like in 2015, like 60 OpenGL had like 60% as many games made with it as DirectX. And so it wasn't just the cross-platform. It had advantages of performance and cross-platform uh, compatibility, and it also had the advantage of stability. It doesn't get rewritten every couple of years, and then it also has ease of use. I don't know. Some people think DirectX is easier because it has more like tools associated with it. I like the simplicity of OpenGL, but they don't understand their own advantages. And yeah, I don't I don't get the sense that these people are terribly concerned with outcomes. Like if they fail, I don't think it really means anything to them.
As long as they get paid, that's all they care about.
There is a over engineering. It's not just a it doesn't just mean that the engineers are sort of disconnected from it doesn't just mean that engineers are too detail oriented and are sort of like disconnected from like the bigger picture. There also is a tendency. There is a very real economic incentive to make things needlessly complicated, and I think every profession is capable of doing this. Like law is the obvious one. Like the legal system seeks to make itself as convoluted as possible in order to ensure that their own security. So if you have a lot of engineers who are given a task, everything else aside, there's not really any driving force there that forces them to err on the side of simplicity. But there are very real concerns, forces that cause them to err on the side of complexity. One is simply wanting to please everyone else. You know, as I understand it, like Qualcomm actually is the whole reason that we had like render passes in there in the first place, and then those got removed. So there's sort of that committee by design by committee, and then there also is, I mean, think about this like committee of engineers, and it's like, oh, we're gonna add this. Okay, we're gonna add this. Okay, we're gonna add this. Oh wait, now we have this is so great. We have this like final like overarching thing that addresses all our needs. Think how many hours we can spend fiddling around with this stuff. Um, yeah, I don't feel very confident in that whole group right now.
Mm.
Yeah, as we so for VR games, we saw a huge increase on AMD cards, like an enormous increase in performance. And then we saw on Nvidia, it's about the same. As I understand it, I think the Nvidia's Vulkan driver is just I think it's like hosted in the OpenGL driver. I read this on like the comments of a story on foreignx.com. Somebody was just commenting on they saw an engineer in the video like said what I just said. So I'm reporting like something secondhand. I never even saw the video, but based on what I've seen, like that makes perfect sense to me. Like Nvidia was never very enthusiastic about Vulkan. They just went along with it, so it makes sense they would take the simplest, take the simplest approach that just gives them reliable drivers. Um, but I saw a big decrease in latency actually in VR. Um, so I'm very happy. Kulex says, period. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the thing is, like with OpenGL, we actually Vulkan code is static. It just sits there, and you never once you reach a certain stage, you can't touch anything because you've got this class that's like 4,000 lines of code, and it's like if you touch one little thing, then the whole thing breaks down, and it just gets to the point where it's hard to even understand it. OpenGL continuously improves. I can always change them. I can always optimize it. Still with Vulkan, it's just like I can't touch it. Actually, I have an idea for something that I want to try. I think it's going to give us like 99% GPU usage all the time, no matter what you do. With Vulkan, I'll just never get to it. It'll never happen. But I do think it's a good idea. It's very cool. The ideas are flowing again.
Neat. Right. So, what's your priority for next week?
I guess if anybody has any problems with prefabs, I think rendering hooks, we should get those in as quickly as possible because that'll allow people to.
Not
What's
not
that?
only render hooks, but not only render hooks, but just logical hooks. I think what I want especially is like an update hook for the world. This way
Okay.
I don't have to tell everything to update in my main loop. I can just say, oh yeah, whenever the world updates, do this.
Yeah, that could be good for some things. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I can get that in pretty quickly. Bug
yeah,
reports, of course, always. And I think we
right.
can start experimenting with some of the things that we were talking about today, especially like the. I definitely want to hear your guys' ideas about the interface for this environment settings window that we're talking about because I think there's a lot of cool things we could do with that.
Yeah, I'm more excited about that and the selection stuff. This selecting features. I think it'll be pretty easy just to make the shift click.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
can
that.
actually. Whoo! I can actually. I'm not just completely stuck. This is cool.
Yeah,
It's going to be a lot of fun. Regarding Linux, no ETA on Linux. It's just like let's finish 1.0, and then at that point, uh, let's do let's do the Linux build because that way I don't have to keep putting out Linux builds this whole time.
I think it'll run fine on Proton since it's using OpenGL.
Oh yeah, some people are using the Vulkan. Some people were using it with the Vulkan build too. But I do know some people have been using it with Proton. But a native Linux build would also be very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, question. It's
hmm
2024.
hmm
What's the best version of Linux? The one true version.
I like Linux Mint. I'm sorry. I think it's Linux Mint for people who want the Debian base because Linux Mint actually takes out all Canonical's garbage and they are very vocal about user choice. But
What does Mint add that Debian does not have?
Debian
Debian,
is
Debian.
more, yeah, Debian or whatever. From my understanding, Debian is meant for it's very focused on open software. So you have to do a lot of edits on your side to make it go to the universe to download proprietary packages, and it doesn't include sudo by default. So you either have to install sudo by yourself or do as which is a little bit lighter than sudo, or you have to log in as root to make changes to your system. So Canonical made Ubuntu to make that easier, but Canonical has been dumb with their snap packages and their advertising in the terminal. And Linux Mint,
And it's purple.
and it's purple, whatever. But Linux Mint, what I liked about Linux Mint is that they used the Cinnamon desktop to make it look like Windows, so anyone coming from Windows feels right at home. And then what they do is that they don't force. They take all the garbage from Canonical, and they are very vocal about user choice and everything. So,
Well,
but yeah,
I think I'm gonna try Debian because that's like as low as I can go without while still being usable. Is Debian based on
yeah,
something?
Debian is a grandfather distro.
What does that mean?
So that means it's something on top of the Linux kernel. Like this, it
Okay,
doesn't
so
derive off
it's the
anything.
primary.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people do use it as their operating system, but it takes a lot of tinkering to get it actually usable for a modern, for a casual user. While Linux Mint is like installing Windows, where you install it, comes with all your utilities, default applications, and all that.
Yeah. I was able to, I don't know, I had a like a virtual machine of Debian going, and I was able to that's how I actually developed Ultra AppKit on Linux,
Right.
is in a VM using Debian. I think maybe it was, I don't know. I
I
didn't have
think
any
it was.
problems with it, but like now I'm curious like what I might run into in the like if I try it again.
Um. Yeah. Another distro you can charge is Manjaro because that's what Steam Deck, the Steam OS, is built off of.
I thought it was built
And
on
that's
Debian.
no, it was, and then now it's built on Manjaro
Oh,
because Debian um they are it's because Arch-based distros are more up to date with the packages. Debian likes to wait like a few months to a year to update anything. So
safe.
the art, yeah. So Debian's more safe, but with games, you have to, if a new driver comes up that increases performance, you don't want to wait like a year for that update to be for that to be in your package manager. You want that as
Yeah.
soon as possible.
Okay.
So
So Manjaro
I
is
think
also something I should. That's from
it's the
Is it like
art.
a usable version of Arch?
Yes, in a sense. I haven't
Okay.
tried it, but yeah, the Linux tree is a big mess, but yeah, people like Arch. I'm more of a Debian kind of guy because I can't figure out the terminal for Arch-based distros. I like sudo apt get whatever. But
My impression of Arch users is they're people who don't actually like want to use their computer. They just want to like type ones and zeros, basically.
well, again,
I don't know if that's true or not, but
well, no, like the original installation thing, you have to I mean, I appreciate it that you actually have to think about how you're installing your operating system, like how your file structure. You have to build your file structure and
yeah, you get to mine your own silicone,
mhm.
build your
Almost,
own
but
transistors.
it's like Vulkan to operating systems. Like you have to do all this. Um, you have more control, but you have to do like an hour work, and you have to know what you're doing. You can't just click next, 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 and install.
Yeah. So
So
Leahy says if you use Flatpak, guarantees library and distro compatibility. Yeah, that's basically like, as I understand it, that's like including a DLL with your program. What I learned with Linux is
mhm.
don't use any libraries. Just
Yeah,
go like
mhm.
use as few of things as you can.
Yep, make everything one big fat binary.
No, but I mean don't use third party libraries at all if you can avoid it. Um,
Mhm.
So like I mean
Well, nice.
literally like I think all Ultra AppKit uses is like X render. And no, I will not touch Wayland. No. It's so they just made it's just like I've taken a look at Wayland and it's just ridiculously complicated. and X is like super. I've done like window creation on Windows, on Linux, and on Mac. And Linux had the best. That was actually the X library was actually the best experience. It was like the simplest to get going, and it just works.
I don't understand why they're switching. It feels like they're only switching on it because they think it's old and they have to reinvent the wheel kind of thing. Like, I'm not sure. I probably need to research myself, like, what the limitations are with X.
It
But
might have something to do with like graphics compositing, like graphics drivers or something. X11 is full of vulnerabilities. Uh, what are these vulnerabilities? I don't know.
well, I know X was made so you can pull you can send like Windows through a network. That's
Yeah,
why when
With X, you see the same. You have this like, it's really weird. Like, I think it's for like client terminal kind of setups. Like these people still haven't like caught on to the idea of the personal computer. I think a lot of them are angry that the graphical user interface was even invented.
yeah.
Fedora is
Wayland.
pushing Wayland a lot. Well, I mean, you still there's still like they're still going to have to provide a library, a version of X going through Wayland if they do that. So it doesn't really matter. They ain't never going to get any Wayland code out of me.
Yikes. I don't know. But Wayland has a good compatibility with X anyway, so
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. It's just
Whatever.
needless complication.
That's what everything's going for. It's just difficult to be difficult.
Easily be implemented. We have X on Wayland. If you have a keylogger on your program on your computer, then you got a big problem, anyways. Okay, so that was only an hour and a half. That wasn't one of our super long sessions. A lot of different stuff today we talked about. Wanted to share a little bit about the geospatial stuff development that I'm working on and how that relates to games in the future, possibly. Some of it, not just space games, but also like just really big, really big terrains, like MMOs and stuff. You don't have to make your ground doesn't have to be curved. You can just make a really big game with a flat
Mhm.
terrain, and
Yeah,
that's okay
but then
too. What's that?
you can't walk. You can't walk around the planet then.
Well, I mean, it depends on what people want to do.
There will be people that will say, "Can I walk around the planet?" So
Well, yeah, we're kind of accounting for that too. Um,
yeah.
so let's see. I want to see what these guys are typing. Plaka and Slastrov. When are we going to get Slastrov Horror 3? Server gives back words. Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed the first two. Oh, I love that. Like the first, okay, so like the first one was just, I don't know what you did, but it was just like this abandoned town, and it was like, it might have been black and white. And then you just go and you find a teddy bear, and I think that was the whole game. But it was creepy. It was really creepy. And the second one was more involved, multiple game levels. I really liked the beginning of it, where you have that like that industrial like mine room kind of thing. That was very cool. And then it did end rather abruptly. I felt. I think there was just like a mine, like those carts at that on that. What was it like going up that track at like a 45-degree angle? I think that was the end of the game.
I miss our game jams.
Yeah, those are fun. We'll get back to that, I think. The second one was badly optimized because all lights had dynamic shade, and I kind of stopped after that last level. Okay.
Yeah, Lebrix didn't like shadows. I remember, especially with point lights. You had to like disable shadows on point lights a lot.
Slashdrop Horror 3. Yeah, I would like to see that. You know, a lot of man, if I was an indie developer, game developer right now, I would make a VR horror game because those seem to be very very popular and there's very few of them. You always see people like asking for more.
Mm.
The Walking
In
Dead
general, a
type like.
horror game.
What's that?
In general, a horror game would be cool.
Yeah.
Horror games were popular in Lebrix because Lebrix couldn't handle lights that well.
Well, we've got that. The performance is
Yeah.
definitely resolved in Ultra. So
Yeah.
now you got lots of lights, lots of teddy bears to find, lots of abandoned towns to walk through. Leahy is typing.
I like the kind of games which is. Do you know Until Dawn?
What's that?
Do you know Until Dawn?
I don't think so.
It's a story-driven horror game. They make really good horror games. This company.
Do you have a? Can you paste a link in the chat?
Sure.
Uh, Leahy, we conventional forward renderer. Yeah, it would have severe. We have a special forward renderer. It handles lots of lights really efficiently, and you also get rid of all the memory transfer overhead of a deferred renderer, and you also have transparency with lighting. You have as many layers of transparency as you want with lighting on each layer. So yeah, I was like the first on board with deferred rendering actually before anybody else was using it, and everybody else was like, "Oh, that's stupid. Why are you using that?" And then it became the standard, and now I'm the first to get off the deferred rendering train
I don't
until
like deferred
dawn.
render.
What's that?
I think you need to change the language. It's for
Yeah,
some reason in my language.
No, I was saying I
did
don't like
somebody
deferred
pointed
render.
that out earlier? Was that you?
What?
Andy, somebody pointed out. Somebody was telling me like you should call it something like you should call it. Don't just call it a forward renderer. Call it like forward plus or something like
No,
that.
it was not me.
Somebody pointed that out, and they were right because you have this weird like misconception. Oh, he's got the hoodie. We need an ultra hoodie.
You need like shirts and you need a lot of swag. I know you said that you couldn't do that because a lot of these printing companies got very limited on where you could put stuff to maximize efficiency. But
Yeah, the Leadworks hoodie was really cool because it had printing down the sleeve, it had printing on the front, it had printing on the back.
right, we need an engine hoodie. I'm thinking like a navy blue and a black. Also t-shirts and shit and other things. So
Mouse pads.
mouse pads.
Mouse
Yeah, if I
pads.
can get like a ultra engine desk pad, not just a mouse pad, but like a desk pad, like a long mouse pad, I would use it.
Or a mug. For the
Yeah.
Yeah,
coffee.
like a mat. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's get to 1.0 and then we can then Schwag
Mhm.
I think would be in order. Because I might, I don't
Um,
know, I might have a booth at GDC next year. So if I do, then I'll definitely have a lot of swag.
yeah. Quickly, just because it came out, when are you gonna fix preview the thumbnail generation?
So it's hard to track down like if and where there is an issue. The thing that so the way that it's communicating right now is by the command line.
Right.
Um, and that might be causing, I'm not sure if that's really reliable. I've never used it before.
Right.
Um, it does seem to have like some issues possibly, but it's also like really hard to reproduce. My idea of the next approach I would do is still have it as a separate executable, but communicate it locally over the internet, like over the local network within the computer itself via eNet, and then use that to pass information back and forth because those two processes have to communicate. And
Right.
I don't want to generate thumbnails on the main in the main process because I want that to be done in the background so that it doesn't pause the application.
Right.
So I think that's if I have to, if the current approach doesn't work, then that's the next thing that I would try.
Right. So the eNet classes might be reintroduced because I know you cut them out a while back.
Well, they don't have to. They don't have to go into the engine. They just, I just copy and paste that code. I think it's up on GitHub actually. I don't
No,
think
I don't
the.
think so.
Hmm?
I don't think so, but it would be
Oh, well, I don't mind. I
really
don't
nice.
mind giving that away to whoever wants to play with it. But I don't think it's terribly useful with how modern networks work.
Well, it's good for like connecting two applications on the same host together. Like if you want like a remote console or something where
Yeah.
you want that's what I've been using it for, and I was kind of upset that I couldn't do like a remote console because
Oh well, I'll just paste that code.
yeah,
I think I've uploaded it before in other places, but I'll make sure there's a
would
copy of it somewhere.
would appreciate it.
Sure. All right. So thank you everybody for coming. Um, and I think we have some cool stuff to work on next week. I'm glad that we're getting more into back into like creative design and stuff,
Right?
and we're able to actually like try new ideas out.
Yep. All right.